Hi, everybody. Today's special guest is Wade Hall-Craggs. Wade, how are you doing?
A little alarmed to be called special, but thank you very much for that, Graham.
Everybody who's been on this series of interviews are very special in their own rights. We've had 7 or 8 world-class business people. We've had 10 world-class athletes who've either been to Olympics or in Olympic holding or potential Olympians. And we've had some great coaches who have all coached at a high level. And we've also had some educational people as well. So we've got a real good mix. So yeah, you guys are all special. You come with your own journey, your own story. So thank you very much for giving us your time, Wade.
A pleasure, Graham.
Excellent. Right. 2 key things I want to kind of pick up from you today and I think we should start with your careers of rowing. First of all, why rowing?
In the family.
Okay.
Goes back quite a long way. I think my great-grandfather rowed, my grandfather rowed, my father rowed. My grandfather missed out. There's a story from racing for the 28 Olympics and they moved the finish line, so he lost the trial race. My father's crew went to the Melbourne Olympics, but without him, blah, blah, blah.
Brilliant. And you also went to the Olympics as well?
Yes, I was a bit lucky there. No, I was very lucky there. I went to Barcelona, so that was the last Olympics before they introduced the quota system. So I was pretty lucky to get there.
Yeah, some people would call it luck, other people would call it hard work and endeavor, good values, potential, talent, ability. I'm sure there's a few of those things I could throw at you and they might stick as well, Wade.
You could try, but I'm a slippery character.
You certainly are. You certainly are that. We've had some great conversations over the years that I've been working with you in Durham. One of the things I've always liked about you is that you have this honesty and integrity that's associated with rowing, the history of rowing and what it means to be a part of the boat club at Durham. Where do you think that came
from? Rowing's an honest sport. I think I think we're quite an odd one in that we start quite late with people. Mm-hmm. So I do think that we provide a home for misfits because people who can't hit a ball are left on the touchline or sidelines. And so they tend to, a lot of them are the people who have grown late as well, who mature late. And so they find their niche in rowing and they're pretty jolly thankful to have that. And so their commitment to the sport is entire. They find it and I've seen this with the students that we coach as well. Some of them really blossom as they find this new niche for themselves. And then we reward hard work. You put the time and the effort in, you get the results. Pretty simple.
Yeah, we had George Bourne on one of the sessions last week, and George was talking about the difference between the hard work on the erg and also maybe the boat craft on the water. How do you measure that in terms of, is that a talent, Wade? Is that an ability? What is the difference between just getting on the ergs and hitting the power, but also being able to manage the cadence of a boat?
Graham, what a good question. You're obviously looking for, well, it's not obvious, but you're looking to try and develop the same skill in 2 different environments. So actually, I spend a lot of my time coaching, listening to the ergo, and getting people to work on rhythm. So I'm not looking at the score so much. I'm thinking about the rhythm of how people are working and how they're propelling the wheel, which is what I'd be wanting them to do in the boat. So beginning to watch the stern and see how the boat's moving. So you watch the stern, you can judge the wake. Okay. So if the wake flares, the boat's sunk. So that's what pushes the wake out. So you're trying to keep the wake narrow, trying to make sure it doesn't check. And so you're getting maximum return from it. And obviously in the whole stroke cycle, you're out of the water for 2/3 of it, you're only in the water for 1/3 of it. So for 2/3 of the stroke, you really want to be making sure you don't interrupt the boat. But the training environment, the number that the ergo provides is more honesty. That's just your output, okay? And you're judging, and we're going to come on to this a little bit later as to what we think about the culture of the club and how we want to see people develop. But that honesty there from the ergo is absolutely non-negotiable, which is uncomfortable for a lot of us. So you need to put it in the context. You see that that's a machine that's trying to help me develop, and that's a measure that I've got. It's not a judgment, it's a measure of my progress. And however, how I would get people to reflect a little bit more on actually that the result is more a reflection of where you are, not of the machine, but we prefer to blame the machine. And on the water, you know, we will do timepieces every week, so we'd be looking to give people a bit of feedback on that. But we've got people who've been in the sport for a while, and they have skills, and you put together these combinations and something happens that you weren't expecting. And so there's a little bit of alchemy there. So there are people who bring something to the bait and light it up, or they've got something that just enables other people to perform better on the water. And that's really special, but you need quite a structured environment to be able to see that. So you've assessed all the different pieces, you've assessed the training, and you've been out doing these things, and so that those results do stand out. It's not that, oh, I put my green socks on today, so it went amazingly. You know, you start to see there are people who've got the skills to do that. So yeah, there are different skill sets, but for you as an individual athlete, you're looking to see what you can take from the two environments to develop yourself. And again, you're at the center of that training model, that training medium, and looking at, right, well, how do I use these different scenarios to help me?
I'm just surprised that with all that technical information that you gave me, that you know it's my green socks that I wear that makes me go fast. We worked with a lot of your boat crews over the last 5-6 years since I've been in Durham, and almost one of the starting points is actually the simplicity in terms of a mindset thing. Is you get in the boat and you make it go as fast as you can from A to B. The complexity that sits with that from a values point of view, from a cultural point of view, and from a behavioral point of view is so much deeper and more thoughtful than just getting in a boat and making it go as fast as you can from A to B, isn't it?
Yes. Do you want more?
Yes, please.
So we've been looking, actually I've been working with 3 of the students who are all philosophy students, and we've been looking at this, and we found a philosopher who's an American politician who's done some stuff on this, and he's really got us thinking quite hard about what is behind the philosophy. And there's some really interesting stuff, but it's around some really conflicting elements about what you're prepared to put in and what you're going to get out. And Coubertin rated rowing as the ultimate Olympic sport, because however much you put in, you are never going to get a return. So there's something about rowing that always saw a greater being. And I suppose I would liken it to those shots, whether you're playing golf or maybe tennis, and you just hit the sweet spot and the ball just does something special. That, oh, where did that come from? And the rowing's a little bit like that, is that you get a stroke that was, oh, wow. And that was, but you're not going to get those without having taken, is it going to be thousands? Is it going to be hundreds of strokes before that allow that one to pop out and be really special? And one of the things that we were looking at with the philosophy is that actually all of a sudden that totally changes your perspective on the sport. So having achieved that one stroke, then everything you've done to date, now the perspective changes. So that's a bit individual, but there's a crew combination, and there's something there with the rowing, and again the philosophy is that of trust, and that you're in a crew and you're trusting. You can't see, you don't know how much they're working, but there's got to be an element of trust, and there's got to be an element of camaraderie, that everyone is going to be working as hard as everybody else. And it starts off when you start rowing, that if you 4 of you turn up to go for an outing, or you're turning up to go for an outing in a 4 and one person doesn't turn up, you don't go out. So right from the outset with your crews, you have to, but that we're in this together, and then you have to build that trust that actually we share this goal. And there's a huge amount, you're right, in underlying that in the simplicity of, the more you put in, the more you're going to get out. But you've got to trust everybody else around you who's taking the same attitude.
Fab, thanks, Wade. And I know you guys have worked ridiculously hard, at least over the time period that I've been there and before me, in terms of wanting to build a culture around the boat club, a culture that allows the athletes to come in and be engaged, but also empowering them to perform at the highest level that they can possibly achieve. At the same time, trying to map that with being a student at a very high academic institution like Durham, and becoming a Durham graduate in what the next 30, 40, 50 years of their life is going to hold as well. How did you start building that philosophy and building that culture for what we have currently at the boat club?
More good questions, Graham. So I'd say that, so I came back having been a student at Durham. It took me, what did it take me? 12 years to come back or something like that. And when I came in, there was still the same carpet on the floor in the gym. There was still the same weights, what have you. So, and actually there was a lot of the same culture as well. And that carried us through for a long time. Yeah, the boat club had lost its coach, and they had become quite an independent body. They'd set up their own development program, fresher program, and that was bringing in people who were new to the sport, who'd never rowed before, and that were good athletes, and they really brought a drive to the club. And that culture stood us in good stead for quite a long time as we developed there. But I would say there's been quite a big shift in the last 5 or 10 years, with the students coming into the club, and we've had to review what we think our culture is. And you've helped us quite a lot with trying to define that. And that's what we've been working on now. Central tenet for me about that is getting the students to believe in themselves. And I would say that we can't have a student at the university who is excelling as an athlete and being pretty poor as an academic. So we're trying to set standards that are consistent in how they conduct themselves in their lives, because we know that if you don't keep it balanced across the whole time, it's going to come back and bite you in the bum sometime. And that's going to muck up our result as a crew. So again, the individual responsibility to make sure you don't do anything that's going to be detrimental to the boat or the result, and taking responsibility for that. But a lot of that is about them having the confidence that they can manage that. And for me, we are still getting exceptional people coming into the university, but they don't always recognize that. And we look at the results that they've got, the grades that they've got, we look at the results they've got on the water, stuff like that. Those are all improving. They're coming up with better grades, A-level grades. They're coming in with probably better results on the water with more professional coaching. But how they cope with the whole, they're not quite so robust. So again, how do they manage all of that and balance it out? And for me, it really comes down to the period. And you asked me about what a Durham graduate should look like. And I think we hit them at a key transition period as they come out with this raw talent, but they think they just take it for granted. It's just what I am, what I do. And over the period they spend with us, the sort of undergraduate career, they learn actually which of these talents of those, which of these are strengths, which of these are areas that they need to manage, and how they cope with the ups and downs. And we are, because we're a sort of all year round sport, there is no sort of let up. You have to manage the whole year. It's not as if that you know, we have the winter off or we have the summer off. It's all the way through, and so we have to manage the whole time. We can't just sort of have a real sprint and then forget about it. It is about managing the whole thing, and so looking, you know, about getting the athletes to take responsibility for themselves, but above all, believing in themselves, not having those crises of confidence. But actually, I do have the skills to manage this situation. Okay, first time might require a bit of hand holding. You know, whether it's by us, whether it's by the college or some other things, or there's going through different scenarios. Yeah, fine. You may need a bit of support, but giving them confidence they can manage it, and then that's what's going to pay us back in spades. And for me, I think this current situation has been a really good example for us, and the motivation of our students to keep training through this period. So they're doing these bizarre remote exams over 48 hours. I mean, what is your 48-hour exam technique? All the way through school, they know how to prepare for an exam, but not a 48-hour one with open books and tea and coffee on tap and mum and dad looking over my shoulder and somebody else has taken the flipping broadband. I can't get on. And how do you manage that? And then not only that, but you've got back-to-back exams. So there's an overlap of 24 hours when you're finishing off one exam and starting the next. And just how our lot have stepped up to the plate and still doing the training, still sending in the scores, and you know how they're supporting each other, setting up the sessions the Zoom sessions that they do together. Huge skills. Again, really good people developing skills that are going to stand them in good stead for life.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I really admire about the boat club. And I work with a variety of organizations and different sports and different coaches. And the one thing I see in the boat club is you guys really trying to pull a more holistic approach around the athlete. So instead of saying, right, your academics is over there, your S&C is over there, your nutrition is over there, your lifestyle is over there, your mental health is over there. Well, actually, there's only one of them. And all of those key variables point back to them. And I see you guys trying to bring a much more rounded approach to the individual, to the person, and that whole conversation about what does a Durham University graduate look like is this holistic approach to everything that they do.
Well, we'd certainly hope so. And so when Laura and Ellie were still with us, we had this business that we were finding. We found that our coaching team, the four of us, were spending more time dealing with individuals' issues than we were coaching. And so that was actually trying to support the person through. We can, of course, be critical and saying that maybe we were taking too much on, but there are different ways of looking at. You know, if we say that we've got all of that sorted out or we've got all of that covered, then they can focus a little bit more on what they need to do for themselves. But there are different ways of approaching that. And of course, we would have tried different techniques, but it was really noticeable at the time with four of us, we were spending more time dealing with individual issues away from than we were coaching.
And I think that's a really good thing, Wade, in a way, because we are in a changed cultural situation. I think society has massively changed over the last 10, 20 years. And we have to be more supportive around our student athletes than maybe ever before. So pulling all of these pieces of the jigsaw puzzle together and trying to empower them and support them at the same time is a really good thing. And I know you've read the book Legacy from the New Zealand All Blacks, and they have that statement about better people make better All Blacks. I think generally better people just make better people. So the more we can empower them to be better people, the more we can enhance the next 40, 50 years of their life. I guess the other thing with you guys as well, you will still be measured by performance, because as a performance coach and a performance program, we want to have a look at, who we're producing. And I think it was last year you had Lauren, Oscar, and George who all went to the World Champs. So how do you manage to still produce world-class rowers and athletes, and at the same time having to deal with some of the other areas that you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis?
My Graham, I suppose the key KPI for us is still meeting the requirements for our funding as a high performance program from GFIS. And so, but behind that is still this business of enabling people to be the best they can be. And I suppose out of those 3 athletes, I mean, that was our most successful ever under 23s with 2 golds and a silver. Oscar was the president that year that he went and got his under 23 silver medal. He'd also taken the crew to the setting 2 new records on the Henley course in the semi-final. And so he'd really lifted the club. But that was, again, looking at each of them, they're talented individuals. I think we could look at what else was happening in the club a bit more widely, and maybe be critical, so that maybe, you know, some of the resource was spread a bit thin, and so we weren't enabling other people to come with us. But we still had the structure in place to allow those people to do that. The story for me out of that year would probably be Lauren May. So there's something that we see as quite important as a program, in enabling people in the region to be able to fulfill their potential. So we talent ID'd Lauren when she was 12 at an indoor rowing competition. She'd never rowed before, but she did really well. We laid on a learn to row course so that she could learn how to do the sport, put her to a local club, and then sort of mentored her through. And she, part of that process, and she's not alone with that, but part of that process, the association with the university, has totally changed her life. So she ended up coming to Durham University, and she would not have considered that before, and ends up as a world champion as well. So for us, that's a phenomenal trajectory. And she was coached by our students through the Junior High Performance Academy, and that was big motivation. She's still in touch with many of the people who coached her, and that's really huge satisfaction for us as a program that we were able to do that. That we sit at Durham University with all these. Well, we've worked quite hard for the resources and stuff like that, but, you know, being able to spread around and inspire other people to change their life trajectory and using sport to reach out to them. But her life's never going to be the same because of that association.
And having worked with all 3 of them at some stages over the last couple of years, they all had at some stage certain wobbles, certain hurdles and barriers they had to overcome. And I think for any athlete in any sport, they have to understand that the road is never straightforward to go. There's always going to be some potential barrier, hurdle, obstacle, change in pathway, something that's going to potentially put them off their game a little bit along the way. And it's about having that resilience. You mentioned robustness, but I think what it really has to do is it's the character that you guys are trying to build within the boat club. The character of defining what a Durham University Boat Club graduate looks like. And all 3 of them have some real strong characteristics that kept them going when things weren't going according to plan.
Yes, and behind that, you know, we've hinted there about some of the outreach work that we do and people putting back into the sport. But we still have, I suppose we're calling it a development program now rather than a fresher program. You know, we're still bringing people into the sport, and they bring a freshness, you know, and there's also, you know, they've got a bit more of an understanding about what their confidence and what they're good at, because actually they've just jumped ship, literally and metaphorically. You know, they've left what they were good at before, they've started in this new environment, and then they take on this bizarre pastime of rowing that takes up all their time, all their energy, and they've got to back themselves. They won't get results that quickly. They've got to back themselves. And so that sets a bit of a tone for the club as well. Those people who have left behind their comfort zone and stepped into this new world, and they set a bit of a tone for us as well. I wouldn't underestimate that. And some of those people, they're real movers and shakers.
Brilliant. Wade, thank you very much for being insightful. I've got one more question before we go, just to challenge your thoughtful process. I love the fact that you bring a lot of philosophy into the boat club. I love the fact that you remind people of the history and the heritage of the boat club in terms of everybody who's gone before them when they arrive. Where does the future lie for Durham University Boat Club? What are your plans for the next decade? Where do you see the boat club going? What changes need to be implemented to keep up with the ever-changing societal world that we're living in?
Good questions. We're working towards our 150th. That's we were founded in 1877, 1878, that academic year. And we're working towards 2028, which is our 150th, and we want to produce 2 winning eights, a men's and women's eight. So one of the first things we did in 2000 was to amalgamate the men's and women's boat clubs, so to operate as one club, and we want to share that success together at our 150th, and we're working to build that. And so a lot of the stuff that's happening at the moment is putting in place the building blocks. We're reviewing our sort of training methodology, and seeing how we can really maximize everybody's return for the time that they put in with us. We're sort of recognizing at the moment that we're quite close to the capacity of what the students can put in time-wise into what we're doing. So we've got to look, well, if they're going to give us that time, how are we going to maximize the return within it? So you've been part of our reflection process on that, and looking at how are we going to maximize the return for the students they put in. So our future is our 150th and producing 2 successful eights for the men and the women, and we're sort of laying the foundations to build towards that.
Fab. Wade, and I'm going to sneak one more in just because I can. And passion is something that when you talk about the boat club, you literally just it just comes out of your pores naturally all of the time, how much passion you have for the club itself, but for the interview. And it's a good job we're on Zoom. But I want to ask a bit of a personal question to finish off with, because you very rarely talk about it, but going to the Olympics in Barcelona for anybody is just a phenomenal thing to do. What was your greatest feeling during that event? How can you explain how you felt during that whole process of being part of a GB team that went to Olympics? And for anybody else who's never been there, who's aspiring to go to maybe 2021, but more likely 28, 32, 36, what inspiration or what top tips can you give them about driving for their own goals?
Good questions. As usual, Graham, sneaking one in at the last minute.
Thanks.
What would be abiding memories or drive for the Olympics? What was really special for me about Barcelona was the rowing was separate. They had their own village up in Banyoles, in a sensationally beautiful lake, only just big enough. I'd actually been there nearly 10 years before, 8 years before, when the under 23s were there, and so that lake was already had associations, but my parents made it out to the Olympics and they were there to watch it, and that was possibly the most special thing. So that association, I suppose it goes back to your point about the history, so that was a big payback for the support that they given me, that one got there and realized that, and they were out there to share it as well, and they had a good time. So that was a difficult one to pass on to somebody else, but it was being able to share it with them, having shared so much of the journey, made it all sort of come together and coalesce, and that would be an abiding memory for me of those games.
Fab, and that's exactly a great one to finish, because cars will come and go, houses will come and go, jobs will come and go, husbands and wives may come and go, but those memories, those connections, those stories, they're there forever. And I think that's what we can create in the world of sport. And if we can fulfill our ability and potential and go to world champs and Olympics, they're stories that we can keep. And that's the thing that I think drives people, the stories.
Really good line to pick up from that, Graham, about the connections. And it provides us all with a common language. And so, I mean, if I was going to say, one of my other memories would be sharing the swimming pool in Banyoles with, after the regatta was over, with the Dutch quad. And, you know, there was a bond built purely through the sport. Each regatta, we'd catch up with each other. I mean, I still remember sitting in the Russian accommodation with the Pimenov twins and hearing them talk. Now, they were gods. And there I was sitting across the table from them talking about it. And there was their quad that had set the world record the year before, sitting there, and they totally bombed out at the Olympics, that crew. But those are just moments that just sit with you. But the language that our own sports give us, they're shared, so you can walk into any club around the world and you already have so much in common, and as a starting point.
Wade, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure. For everybody else, please subscribe. Please share this around the world of rowing, but around the world of sport, because Wade's had a great history as an athlete and actually is still continuing to have a great career as a coach at Durham University as well. So Wade, thank you very much. I'm sure you've got lots of gardening to do.
Mm-hmm.
Fabulous. Thank you. And hopefully we will catch up soon when we all get to leave our houses.
Well, will you make sure you keep you and your family safe, please, Graham?
I will do. You too, Wade. Take care. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Cheers then.